Hey everybody, today I'm going to be talking about That Is by Guy Gavriel Kay. This was my third Guy Gavriel Kay book, the first being The Lions of Al-Rassan, the second being A Song for ARBONNE, which was my favorite book of last year. And I have spoiler-free reviews for those two videos and spoiler-filled discussions, and this video will be spoiler-free for this book, and I will be hosting a spoiler-filled discussion this weekend on Sunday, 1 p.m. EST here on my channel with Library Ladder, Red Fairy Books, and Jake Bishop. So you could check that out, but if you catch this video after that live show, you could always check out the replay. I'll leave the link in the description. So this was actually my least favorite K book of the three I've read so far, but I still have a lot of positive things to say. So the way I'll structure this review is I'll talk about the themes first, and then I'll go into an overview of the story, and then I'll give you my more mixed feelings, some of the things that didn't quite work for me in this book, and then I'll end with some of the positive things that I really loved about this book. And before I get into any of that, I should go ahead and say that this was largely inspired by Italian Renaissance history. And if you want some really good information and resources about the influences, then I am going to point you also to my description where I will link Max Garfield's videos. They're so informative about the religious influences, the historical influences, the folklore, all the historical details that went into this story. The main theme of this story is largely focused on memory, memory as a source of home, of honor, of pride, of love, but also memory as a source of pain and trauma. Kay says in the afterword of this book, he talks about memory, the necessity of it in cultural terms, and the dangers that come when it is too intense. And I feel like you get that full spectrum of that theme in this book. Another theme I felt came to the forefront in this story included the balance of power, especially in this story. I'll get into this in more detail in a little bit, but as we have two tyrants who are ruling this peninsula, and if one tyrant is left a little more powerless, how does that affect the rise of power of the other tyrant? How does that play when tyrants are mortals? How does the power shift, and how does that affect the lands, all the people involved? And then another theme I thought was present in this story was that of renewal. And not only renewal in the sense of being hopeful, springtime, I think comes up when you think of renewal, not only of a new chapter, but also bringing forth the bittersweet, melancholy feelings of what we went through in the past, how the past is still part of us when we go into a new season, when we go into a new chapter. So there again, memory is tied into renewal in that sense. So I would say this is a great book if you're a theme-driven reader like me, but it's also a wonderful story that involves action and great character moments and wonderful magic, a lot of things to appreciate in this story. But as far as an overview, this is dealing with a peninsula called the Palm. It is divided into 9 city-states, and in the east, there is one tyrant who rules some of these city-states. In the west, another tyrant rules, and in the middle, there is a province that is neutral. And we also have in the prologue, we get a sense of what we're dealing with one of the tyrants. It starts out in the prologue when one of the tyrants is battling Tigana. Now, the Prince of Tigana notes that they killed the Duke's son, and this causes the tyrant to use magical sorcery to erase the memory and name of Tigana from all except those who are from Tigana. So anyone who hears the word Tigana, they can't hear it. They don't understand what they're hearing, and they don't know about Tigana. It's like an unknown territory. So this leads to people from that land later on after the prologue, which takes place at a later time. It leads to people coming together for a common cause to bring back the name of Tigana, to bring back not only the name, but the memory, the honor of the land. And then the cause becomes big because if you take out one tyrant, the tyrant who cast this magic spell, then you run the risk of allowing the other tyrant to become more powerful. So you have to take out both tyrants at once. And so this leads to a very delicate operation with many moving parts and many conflicting emotions. So, throughout the story, we are gathering this band of people together, which includes a couple of young singers. It includes a couple of people that I think you'll get to know as you read on. I don't want to reveal too much, but we do have a ship merchant, a shipmaster. We also have a king who is a newly appointed king. We have various people from various positions in the land who are coming together for this larger cause. And again, it's not just about Tigana, it's about freedom from tyrants. It's about freedom overall. And we have some fantastic speeches about that particular theme as well. This book is divided into 5 parts. And in part 2, we are introduced to another character, a female character, who is in close proximity with one of the tyrants, with the tyrant who cast the spell on Tigana. And this character, Dianara, she is from Tigana. Her plan is to get close to this tyrant. She joins his Seishan, which is his harem, and she wants to assassinate him in order to free her land and the memory of it again. The challenge is, as she pretends to be from somewhere else, she pretends to be from another land, that she starts to have conflicting feelings. She starts to have feelings for this tyrant. And you feel her conflict as we go on in this story. And this is also largely tied into the magic in this story. So I'll go ahead and pivot from here into the magic. There is magic in this story. I would say of the 3K books I've read so far, this book is the most highly magical. So, in addition to the magic erasing the name of this land, thus causing the whole entire purpose of this plot, of this story, we also have interesting folklore magic involving Rizalka. I keep thinking of Ruzalka, and I think that's where the word comes from, or is it's inspired by that kind of mythical creature. I'll put an image on the screen of what I'm thinking about. But this is part of the story, and we also have some other kinds of magic. We have healing magic, and the healing magic is not overly explained. We just understand that some people have healing magic in the story, and it has limitations. It has a cost to it, and that's all you really get to know. We also have a little bit of psychic magic, and we also have some other magic that I'll get into when I go into the things I didn't care about in this story. But for the most part, I would say the magic is very well integrated into this story. Another thing to note are the characters. We have multiple characters in this story, and not just male characters, but female characters, not just older characters, but younger characters as well. And I think that Kay is a master at writing more than one powerful, charismatic character on a single page. I don't know how he does it, but he's able to do that so well. He has a way, and I've noticed this in all 3 books I've read so far, he has a way of making characters cross path at the right moment in their lives. Characters who come from different backgrounds, who might be a little more seasoned or a little bit young, but they find themselves making a single choice that changes the rest of their lives, that changes their destinies in a sense. And it feels very serendipitous. And at the same time, it feels very natural. It doesn't feel like a plot contrivance. It feels like this was almost meant to happen, but organic at the same time. So I really appreciate how these characters come to be part of this story, how they come to be part of this bigger cause. And also related to the characters, I think one of the biggest highlights of this story is the fact we have 2 tyrants. And with one of the tyrants, we get that tyrant's actual perspective. It's one of the perspectives in the story. And this character is very wretched and pathetic. But then we have the contrast of the other tyrant. And the other tyrant, which we learn about through Dianara's perspective, is terrible. He's vile. And at the same time, he has certain qualities that might be redeemable, that leave you wondering, that lead you to see how complicated this is, especially for Dianara, but complicated overall. And so I think having those 2 contrasting tyrants adds so much richness to the story, and seeing the ways that the followers of those tyrants respond to those tyrants. That's another key thing. You'll see that the amount of respect or the ways of viewing one tyrant is completely different than the other tyrant, than the people surrounding the other tyrant. So I found that contrast really compelling in the story. Additionally, in the story, you get perspectives of trade, of religion, of other lands and other leaders, and how they're affected by these 2 tyrants in this peninsula. Now I'm going to talk about the things that didn't quite work for me in the story. And keep in mind, I'm one reader, so other people might vary in their feelings about these things. But one of the things that didn't work for me were the sex scenes. There were two that I found rather abrupt, rather clunky in the narrative. I could tell there was an attempt to incorporate theme with at least one of them. The other one, someone told me that there was theme involved in it, but I can't quite see it. And there was a third sex scene which I loved because I felt like it connected to the theme of renewal, and I could get behind that, and I enjoyed that scene. But the other two, they were just weird, and I was surprised by that because I have defended the sex scenes in The Lions of Al-Rassan. If you watched my spoiler-free review, I did talk about those, and A Song for a Bone as well. I felt like they were very natural to what would happen between the characters. It made sense. They made sense to me. And I'm not against sex in books by any means, but they were just strange the way they were written in Tigana. Another thing that didn't quite work for me was related to the magic, and I quite enjoyed the magic in this book. I loved how magic was incorporated into the main mission of this story, into Tigana losing its name and memory, into the sorcery with the tyrants and the healing magic I described earlier, and even the Rizalka. I enjoyed a lot of the magic, but there was a certain corny scene that I found rather silly. I just couldn't get into it. I know it was related to the folklore. It just didn't work for me personally. And then the other thing that I feel very mixed about, and I'm most conflicted about this last criticism, and I really don't want to be critical about this, but the second half of the story, the pacing slowed down quite a bit for me. When I got to the 60, 70, 80% mark in the book, I found myself having to slow down because we were being introduced to more lore, more history, more characters, more aspects of how the religion was complicit with the tyrants in the story and affecting things. And it was all interesting. This is why I'm conflicted because all of that information was very, very interesting. The problem was so late in the story, it pulled me out of my momentum to get to the end. I ended up coming to a halt at one point, just trying to absorb all this new information. And I don't know, I mean, was it worth it? Yes. It was really interesting information, but it did slow me down. I feel very conflicted about that because I really also appreciate when an author takes the time to do something different with the structure and not give you a cookie cutter structure. So I appreciate that attempt. But it wasn't really the most positive experience to have to slow down that much at 80% into the book. The end, however, had so many payoffs. And even though I was critical about some of the sex scenes, there were some romantic moments that I loved in this story. And there were some really powerful, emotional moments that were set up so well. There were moments of complexity where I was left wondering if characters made the right decision or not, and I loved that touch of ambiguity. At the same time, it was a very satisfying ending. Also, one other highlight I have to say too are the cultural touches in the story. So now I'm going to gush a little more. I was talking about this with my friend Sarah from Sarah Reads, who's also becoming a huge Kay fan. And we were talking about the cultural touches in Kay's books. She was talking about how he incorporates wine and song. And he's so good at that. He's so good at bringing forth annual festivities and making you feel very immersed in the world in that way. And I love the way that he brings attention to the seasons. There's so much anticipation for the seasons changing and what that's going to mean in the story, what's to come. He brings attention to the time of day. I noticed this in A Song for a Bone too. In this world, we have two moons like we do in A Song for a Bone. I guess that's common in K books. I'm not sure. But he brings a lot of attention to how that affects the atmosphere, how that affects the action, how that affects what the characters see or don't see. And those details, they really add to my immersion. So I appreciated all of the cultural touches and all of the atmospheric touches, the seasonal aspects, the time of day, all of those things were so well done in this story. Okay, my dog is crying at me, so I gotta take her out in a minute, but I just have to say that I really think that this is a brilliant book. If you love a theme driven story, if you love the incorporation of music and festivities, culture, if you enjoy historical influences in your story, if you want good adventure and romance and powerful emotional character moments, there were so many things I loved about this book, even though there were things I just really didn't care for. So I need to hear from you now. If you've read Tigana, if you're planning to read it, let me know in the comment section below. Please check out the spoiler filled discussion. And thank you so much for watching. Have a great rest of your day. Bye bye.